When I first saw this story, I had tears in my eyes. The scene where Wilson gets separated from Chuck and how, in the end, he loses his girlfriend even after finally making it home really got to me. It was very emotional for me. The movie starts, and we learn about Chuck Nolan's life, who got stranded on an island. He had to live there for 4 years. The scene starts in a company where we see Chuck. He is very serious about his work. The officer wants all couriers to be delivered on time. Because of this, Chuck travels out of the country. The company has many branches, but Chuck is good with his colleagues. He emphasizes the importance of time to them. Chuck is in love with a girl named Kelly. Their relationship is strong, and they're ready to get married. But they can't get married because of their jobs. Christmas is near, and Chuck has to go on a business trip to Malaysia. He has to go for the company's work. Chuck reassures Kelly that he'll be back on New Year's Day. Kelly says, "How will I celebrate Christmas?" Chuck agrees with her. Chuck and Kelly exchange Christmas gifts. Kelly gives him a watch with her picture in it. Now Chuck leaves for Malaysia, but a storm hits and his plane crashes. It was the company's private jet. There were 4 other people on the plane. It crashed into the Pacific Ocean. Only Chuck survived, drifting in the sea. When he wakes up in the morning, he finds himself in a boat. Chuck is worried when he doesn't see anyone around. He calls out, but there's no sign of any other humans. He writes a big "help" on the ground so that any passing planes might see it and rescue him. Night falls, and he goes to sleep. The next morning, he wakes up to find that his "help" sign has been erased. Now, he uses a piece of wood to write again. He is convinced that someone will come to his aid when they see the sign. Chuck is hungry, but he finds nothing in the company packages. Then, he hears a sound. Looking around, he spots a fallen coconut. He realizes the sound came from the coconut. He drinks the coconut water, as it's all he can get. He survives on this water. Chuck has been here for 3 days. His feet are injured due to the rocks in the sea. He is barefoot. He cuts his pants in half and wraps the pieces around his feet to ease the pain. Suddenly, he sees the peak of a mountain and decides he must climb it at any cost. He believes that if he tries to climb it, he will reach the top. Then, he notices something floating in the sea. When he comes down, he is shocked to see that it is the body of the plane's pilot. He cries a lot and makes arrangements to bury him. But before burying him, he takes the pilot's torch and shoes. He became accustomed to living on the island. He survived by drinking dewdrops collected on leaves. He tried to catch fish but failed. Other than dewdrops and coconut water, he found nothing else to eat. He depended on these for food. One night, he got very excited when he saw a ship in the ocean. He flashed his torch and shouted for help, but it was all in vain. The next day, he decided to leave the island with his makeshift raft. He knew there was no one else there. During his escape, he got caught in strong waves and nearly drowned. In the process, he injured his leg, and it started bleeding. Chuck returned and it started raining. He saw a cave and went inside to spend the night there. He turned on the torch. Keeping it on all night, the battery ran low. He had nothing else for light. He didn't even know how to start a fire. He returned and found some items in the company package that had washed up with him. When he opened it, he found just a few useful things, like a pair of skates with steel blades. With the steel blades, he could easily cut coconuts. Now, he could cut anything. He sharpened a wooden stick and caught fish. Since he couldn't eat raw fish, he tried to make a fire but failed. Then, Chuck got the idea to rub 2 types of wood together to create fire. Amazingly, it worked, and he succeeded. For the first time, he felt happiness on the beach. In the company package, he also found a volleyball, which touched his heart. He drew eyes, a nose, and a mouth on it with his hand, making it look like a human face. He made a friend out of it, talking to it and drying it by the fire. He named it Wilson. There was another problem related to his toothache. It was an old pain, but he never got it checked. Now, Chuck wanted to pull out the tooth that was hurting, and he did so. After that, he passed out. Over time, he spent 4 years on that island. In those 4 years, he learned how to survive. His appearance changed as his beard and hair grew long. He looked very weak, although he had learned how to catch fish, casting a rod to catch them. Chuck had become very close to Wilson, often talking to it. One day while eating fish, he heard a sound. When he looked, he found a steel sheet. An idea struck him that he could use it to escape. Whenever he tried to escape, the ocean waves would block his path. Now, he was building a raft out of coconut wood. He also used the sheet metal as a front shield. Building the raft wasn't easy, but he decided to plan his escape when the weather was right. He began using the steel sheet to push water away from the raft, propelling it forward. Placing Wilson on the raft, he set off. He encountered large waves on his journey, but the distance across the ocean still lay ahead. He didn't know when he would see land. He was optimistic about getting home, but it was no child's play. He faced harsh conditions during the voyage. He carefully rationed his food, saving fish to eat and collecting rainwater to drink. He collected rainwater and coconut shells. He saved them for tough times. Suddenly, Chuck's volleyball, his friend Wilson, fell into the ocean. When he realized this, he had already traveled a long distance. He jumped into the water to save Wilson but failed. Returning to the raft, he cried a lot. Wilson had been with him for the past 4 years. Chuck had grown very emotional about it, as it was not just a volleyball to him. He was deeply saddened by this loss. Now, after many days of travel, Chuck was very exhausted. A ship passed by his floating raft. The sailors rescued him. Chuck was back, but everything felt different. His friends and relatives thought he was gone. His beloved girlfriend Kelly was now married. She had a daughter too. Chuck went to meet her, and Kelly hugged him happily. But now that Kelly was married, it all felt pointless. Their paths had diverged. Chuck returned the watch he had kept because it was Kelly's family heirloom. He kept the photo from the watch. Kelly told him, "You promised me you would come back." Apologizing, he was about to leave. Kelly still loved Chuck, but she had her own family now, so she couldn't go with him. Kelly had the car Chuck had given her. She returned it, and Chuck drove away in that car. Seeing this, Kelly felt sad and ran after him. Chuck returned, and they embraced. Kelly told him, "I knew you were alive and would come back. But I had to marry under pressure." They expressed their feelings for each other. Chuck picked her up in the car to take her back home. He said, "I don't want to break up your marriage." Now Chuck was sitting with his friend, telling him that he had also tried to commit suicide on the beach. When he was about to end his life, the thought of Kelly came to his mind, that he had to go back to her. When he returned, he found out he had lost her. Time had taught Kelly to choose her life's path, and she got married. Now Chuck was alone, but life goes on. Finally, Chuck had a package he had brought from the island. When the plane crashed, many packages washed ashore. He thought about opening the package after returning home, but didn't. He decided to return the package, but found no one there. He left a note on the door, saying, "This package saved my life." Then he left. Now we see Chuck on a muddy road, looking at a map. Where should he go? A girl passing by gave him directions. Her car had the same wing symbol as the package. Chuck followed her and arrived at the same house where he had left the note. She told Chuck that she had also lost her business partner. Chuck and Bettina's paths might cross in the future. There was a glimmer of hope in Chuck's eyes. But with that, the film's story comes to an end. And friends, I hope you enjoyed this story. Now I bid you farewell, and I'll see you again with another story like this. Until then, subscribe to this channel